Hello, friends. Welcome to a impromptu Pod Maverick podcast, a Kirk Your Enthusiasm episode. I am joined by longtime friend, former colleague from many websites ago, and current Mavs Do Everything media guy, Bobby Karalla. Bobby, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Hoping to retain internet and power for at least the next half hour, but we'll see what goes.
That's funny. I went on a Boston show last night, and I told the guy, I was like, look, this power might go at any moment. I'm sorry. We're joining you. Let's see here. It's Monday afternoon, about 3:45. I'm trying to sort of squeeze stuff in. We only got a certain number of days before the finals, and I really wanted to talk to my friend Bobby, because last time we talked, we just were sort of beating this down during the pre-show. It was late January. And he walked us through. It's an hour-long podcast, and if you have time, if you're really looking to fill the hours, if you don't have enough Mavericks content, which I really don't see how that's possible, all of my basketball feed is Mavericks. It's glorious. But if you really want some deep, nerdy basketball talk, Bobby explained for almost an hour about a lot of what the Mavericks had hoped to do defensively way back January 26th. And it's so funny. It's about 2 weeks before the Mavericks traded for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. And re-listening to it in hindsight, knowing what the Mavericks wanted to do, and now seeing what the Mavericks have done, it's just such a reminder that with certain schemes and certain ways you assemble teams, if you don't have the right personnel, you just can't. You can't paper over everything, no matter how talented guys are, et cetera. And I cannot believe the Mavericks have come this far. So Bobby, like my first question to you, is after the trade, what have been the things that have stood out to you the most for the Mavericks on the defensive side of the ball?
The benefits of positional size, not just having Gafford and Lively for 48 minutes, which, I mean, remember, like before the trade deadline, Lively missed so much time throughout the course of the first half of the season that it was like not only Lively and Dwight Powell, it was like Dwight Powell and Markieff Morris were your centers, and like Maxey every now and then, but he missed a bunch of time too. So having more size at the 5 is big, but having PJ in there as a 4, the ability to play Jones at the 3 and have Luka like defend, whether it's wings or sometimes even guard. So like Luka's a big dude too. So there's always another guy that's 6'7", 6'8" with a wingspan on the back line, which allows the Mavs to play their bigs a little further out on the perimeter. One of the things we talked about in that hour-long show was the Mavs are really good when they switch, and they're really good when they ice, but they just don't do it enough. They play a lot of drop. And part of the reason that they played drop before is to preserve Luka's juice and Kyrie's legs, throughout the season and stuff. But also, if you're running a middle pick and roll, and Derek Lively stepping out 25 feet from the rim, there's a whole lot of space underneath for that big man to dive to. And I mean, you said it yourself before the show, like, is Tim going to be the tag guy? Like, is 6'5" Grant Williams going to tag? Like, are we counting on, Josh Green to stop that? I mean, the Mavs have played bigger teams than their pre-trade deadline selves in the playoffs, and those teams haven't been able to stop the pick and roll. So the Mavs couldn't either. They just couldn't stop lob guys. They couldn't stop stuff around the rim, but now they can. And whenever you have bigger guys elsewhere throughout the lineup, it allows you to use your actually biggest guys in more unique and interesting ways, which I feel like definitely caught some teams off guard so far in the playoffs.
I remember one of the things we talked about too, and it's very entertaining in hindsight, just watching human Pokemon Derek Lively evolve into his next form. I remember complaining and being like, I think Lively can guard in space. Why don't the Mavericks let him loose in space? And the answer was obviously they don't want him to get in foul trouble, A, and they didn't really have any other options unless you wanted to go Maxey at 5. You don't want to overextend Dwight Powell at that point in the year. But but it's pretty crazy to watch what has gone on with Lively. Can you explain sort of, as far as what you've seen being up close and nearby the team, sort of the evolution of Derek Lively and his sort of understanding paired with like the level of responsibility the Mavericks have felt comfortable giving him? Because I've honestly, not even with Luka, I've never seen anything like this. Never with an NBA player.
Yeah, it seems like rookie bigs, except for like the really extraordinary ones, right? I mean, like Wemby obviously is
Sure.
he's no ordinary rookie, right? Coaches and development staffs kind of handle those guys like they have training wheels on, for the first year in the league, and sometimes even longer than that, just because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of coverages to call. The speed of the game is so much faster. In college, you might defend 5 pick and rolls a game. In the NBA, you're going to defend 25 per quarter
to a possession. Yeah.
And it moves so fast. And so they do kind of like oversimplify the role. And that was sort of the case with Lively earlier in the season. I mean, we talked about the Mavs played a lot of drop. It was a very conservative scheme. He hardly switched at all. Foul trouble certainly had something to do with it, but that feels like a conversation we haven't had about him in like months.
No, I mean, it just hasn't mattered. He has
for the pick. I mean, it's come a long way, man.
I also feel like he gets a bit like this might seem like hyperbole, but one of the things that obviously took the Mavericks to the 2011 championship was the interpretation of verticality at the rim.
Yeah.
And that dude just like, he looks like, and obviously there's a reason for that. Prime Tyson Chandler has played a part in mentoring him, but the willingness to he just doesn't seem to make the same mistake twice. And that's the part that I wish I could properly contextualize to non-big men. Like so many people in my life that I still know are like lapsed guards that love to have the ball. And I'm like, look, guys, we bigs, and I'm a lapsed fatty big myself, where it's just like, you don't get the ball that much. You get a certain level of assignment. You often are the last line of defense. Mistakes are often laid at your feet. And so just watching Lively take these gargantuan steps from week to week. And obviously you're right. He did miss 25 games for a variety of reasons, some injury, some personal. And it's just, you put all that into one package. And, it was pretty sure that Tim McMahon actually said this on the True Hoop podcast. No, Hoop Collective podcast. He said, Derek Lively is the second best rookie from this class when it's all said and done. And
it's a base take.
I love it. I remember I was in Mexico and they drafted Lively, and I was like, no. And so was like the local apparatus. And this is just the biggest home run. And I want to say we don't talk about him enough. I think that's not fair. We do talk about him enough, but he's the skeleton key that has allowed everything else to sort of come together defensively on top of the trade, because you're allowed to play him. You're allowed to be a little more, not reckless. What a word I'm looking for. Just aggressive. Just the Mavericks are allowed to be aggressive with their bigs almost the entire game, unless there's like crazy foul trouble.
Yeah, and a lot of that is due to the personnel around them. I mean, again, like just having bigger guys on the floor means if Lively or Gafford find themselves a little out of position as a dude is driving to the rim from the left side of the floor, they're over on the right side trying to make a play, like it's not the end of the world, because PJ's there or Jones is there. So those guys are liberated to try a little more stuff, to try and go make a play, whereas before, especially before the trade deadline, Lively was kind of being treated as, and rightfully so to a degree, but different role of like the defensive anchor. Like, hey, you are the back line, so you better always keep the play in front of you. You better always be in position. So whenever they set a screen, we need you to back up to the basket, because whether it's not having faith in the point of attack defender to stay in front of their guy, or not having faith in the rotations on the weak side of the floor, like there just was a lot of uncertainty almost every time down the floor. So Lively had to play this very restrained style of defense. But now that, Luka and Kyrie are committed, they're dug in, they're definitely defending. Pretty much everybody that is in the rotation now is defending at a level that they haven't played probably in their career, and your starting lineup is full of dudes. Lively can go do some stuff. He can step out and switch out and guard on Shea, on the perimeter, and J-Kid can be like, well, let's see what you got. And he held his own. It was amazing. I don't think that they would have given him that leeway before the deadline,
Mhm.
before they got PJ, before, whenever Luka and Kyrie weren't maybe defending possession to possession with the intensity that they are. But again, now that everybody's locked in, it's like, one thing that Tyson did on that 2011 team, like you were talking about, he made everybody better, but
Mhm.
also everybody made him better too. It's like, can Dirk be a really good team defender? Maybe he'll never be a good one-on-one defender, but if you surround him with Tyson Chandler and Sean Marion, then yeah, he can be a really dang good team defender. And now we're seeing that with Luka and Kyrie, which allows Lively to do a little more stuff. And whenever you play a little more aggressively, you can get more blocks, you can get more steals, more turnovers, you can force guys to pick up their dribble. Like, you can take the fight to the defense, or to the offense, I guess. In this case, put the offense on defense. You can be the actor and make them the reactor, as opposed to just waiting for the other dude to make their move, and all of a sudden now I have to go clean up the mess. It's just like it's a different approach to defense.
It's amazing. Well, I want to circle back to Kyrie and Luka, but I do want to know a little bit more about the new guys. Josh Bowe, sort of in the boredom of free agency in July, wrote a piece at Mavs Moneyball where he's like, why doesn't anybody offer this guy a contract? And that, like, Josh was the catalyst for Mavs social media being like, ooh, can we get PJ? And then that just sort of carried on. But the PJ conversation for him was always offense. Defense was never really part of the discussion. Friend of the show, Istok Franco, kind of got cooked for his, this guy can't play defense take, which wasn't a bad take based on history. He couldn't, or rather hadn't played much defense. What have you been surprised about since PJ's joined the team, as far as both his defense and his offense? Why not both?
I mean, stats aren't really going to be friendly if you're playing in Charlotte, but I mean, there was stuff on film that would make you think like, oh, buddy, I don't know. But again, there was no Derek Lively and there was no Derek Jones in Charlotte.
I like Mark Williams, though. I like some of those guys.
Me too. I like Nick Richards a whole lot too, man. I mean,
it's probably more the team construct there, where everybody's pace chasing their own stats. You get about 30 games in and you're not going anywhere. So, okay, I'm just going to do me.
But that same kind of thing happened here, right? I mean, like, watch the Mavs defend for the first 40 games of the season and then watch them defend for the last 40 games. And you're going to be like, oh my God, this is the same team. This is the same season. Like, that team attitudinal shift hasn't happened in Charlotte, and luckily it did in Dallas, sometime around February. But I think a lot of it is just buy-in, man. Like, so much of defense, and we've seen evidence of it ourselves, with especially Luka and Kyrie, not to like diminish what those guys have done in the playoffs, but like, it's night and day difference from the regular season, as I'm very happy that they're putting it all on the, leaving it all on the floor on defense. But like, this is what can happen whenever you decide, like, yeah, let's do this. And so I think there's probably something to do with the coaching staff, talking PJ into it, saying, hey, if you want to get a lot of minutes here, if you want to be the starter, if you want to play in crunch time, you got to defend. And then your offense will come. And then also part of it on PJ for buying into that and agreeing to do it. But yeah, I mean, I never would have thought, not that I was just a Charlotte Hornets P1 or anything,
but we watched them help burn the Mavericks down last April when they beat the Mavericks twice in a row.
Yeah, I mean, Dennis Smith Jr. beat the Mavs. I wouldn't say it was PJ's defense putting the clamps on Luka or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, one of his first games here, he was guarding Wemby, and it was just awesome. He's able to use his, because PJ's like, he's kind of built weird. Like, he's very broad shouldered and he's tall, but he's not like super thick. But he's not lean either. He's kind of built like Sean Marion, right? Where it's like Marion's kind of a big dude, but not imposing, but like definitely
the shoulders are the real standout thing for both those guys. I like that comp. That's
where they're wide, but they're not like, they're not thick or bulky or anything. But that kind of body type matches up really well, I think, with really tall, really slender bigs, which is something that we might see here starting next week if he gets matched up on KP at all, which could very well be the case.
Can't wait for that.
And so it's just a really interesting thing. Like, he's not really guarding too many guys one-on-one. I mean, speaking of controversial takes on Twitter about PJ Washington's defense, your boy Matt Moore saying that HP Basketball out here saying that PJ is a better defender than Derek Jones. I wouldn't go that far, but PJ plays his role on defense really well. He can guard one-on-one.
Yeah, I didn't agree with that. I think they each match up with different styles of guys very differently. Like, you can get away with Derek Jones on Cat for maybe 2 possessions, but you don't want him to guard Cat for a quarter. No. And, PJ, do you remember how mad I was, and everybody, of course you do, how mad everyone was when PJ sat on James Harden's right hand in game, I guess it was maybe game 1, or like, what was the game where Harden made all those
You
damn
can guess how
floaters?
mad I was too whenever that was
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Well, anyway, PJ is just a remarkably interesting player, and they've got him on the upswing, which is something I just wouldn't have ever imagined.
I mean, he's completely redefined his
Mhm.
kind of like public perception of his game.
Mhm.
Like he's now like a legit. I mean, it's kind of lazy to do the comp, but like that Aaron Gordon role, of
Mhm.
just really dynamic four that unlocks a lot of things because he's got size, and I think he's probably got more scoring chops than Gordon, honestly, which we've seen at various points throughout this run.
Mhm. And then there's our last guy, Daniel Gafford. Now, Gafford has been obviously he gets some really incredible like staircase climbing highlight blocks, but I don't know, I don't want to say not impressed, but I felt like that Gafford sometimes gets burnt defensively. Only, and I didn't really vocalize this because there's no point. The Mavericks are playing really well, so who cares if one guy isn't doing as well as another guy? But then Lively gets his neck injury, and in game 4, and really game 5 too, I thought Gafford played some of the best defense of his entire season.
Dude, yeah.
It just like doing a lot of the wall stuff that I'm talking about with Lively, because sometimes like Gafford gets a little ahead of his skis and wants to not chase blocks, but just a little too bouncy. He also has felt like at times that he can't defend in space, only for
Mhm.
him to defend in space. What have you thought of Gafford's impact, and do you think that there's more? Not necessarily to unlock, but I mean, it's like he's a guy in his mid-20s. Is there things that he can add to his game as he, because he's on a great contract, he's obviously going to be with the Mavericks for a while. What do you think of his play?
I don't know about what he can add to his game. I mean, I guess just like further refining everything, touch around the rim and all that stuff. I think the more glaring difference between Gafford and Lively to me at the beginning of the Wolves series was Gafford's decision making on the short roll versus Lively's.
Oh yeah,
It's kind of like, man, like Lively just makes these reads faster, processes everything better. Defensively, though, dude, he was just a monster the last couple games. I mean, just an absolute freak of nature. And, he's got the body type, the strength, the sturdiness, and the verticality, too, to get some rebounds, even that, Lively, maybe if he was scrapping with Gobert, might not have been able to pull down. But Gafford is just a vacuum down there. It's amazing. I think Lively's got the edge on the offensive glass, though, which is interesting. But that's kind of beside the point. I'm with you on defending
back and forth. Just
what?
Having 48 minutes of center play. I mean, this team has been a part of your life since forever.
Yeah.
There have been so many centers, like Evan Eschmeyer is my go-to, like, who's that random Mav? And then it's like you go look at, I want to say it's like the 2001, 2002 team when everyone was so terrified of Shaq. There's like 7 guys 6'9" or taller. And now the Mavericks have 48 minutes of potential all-star one day in Derek Lively and just unbelievable starting level, but probably back up in his time with the Mavericks and Daniel Gafford. Like I just can't get over it, man. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. I mean, they had a pretty good 1-2 punch the year they won the title with Tyson and Brendan Haywood, but
that's right.
Haywood was such a different kind of big. Like Gafford and Lively have a lot of overlapping skill sets. You can just play the same way no matter who's on the floor. Haywood was more like around the rim, a little back to the basket, a little maybe less mobile than Tyson. Certainly just as imposing and, maybe even a better rebounder, but like they just kind of different styles. But dude, I mean, Lively and Gafford are redundant, like in a good way. I'm with you though on the defending in space. I think Lively's quicker, a little fleeter foot.
His feet are incredible. Like being able to stay in front of SGA. I just want to kind of clip that and watch it over and over again and show it to the kids I have to coach where I'm like, look, this guy is guarding one of the best players in basketball and stonewalls him.
Yeah, I mean, the technique is great. The discipline is great to not reach, and that's a big challenge with bigs because like you think, okay, I can definitely guard this guy if I stay this far away from him, but then you're giving him a 3. So then the next time down the floor, you're like, all right, I'm going to step out a little further, and then they know it, and then they're blowing past you.
Case in point, Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, dude. And Cat was doing that to everybody. Cat was doing it to PJ too. It wasn't just the bigs, But in this series specifically against Boston, they're always going to have 5 shooters on the floor. Always. Boston doesn't really have as many like tic-tac-toe, a lot of cutting, a lot of moving it side to side. They're a little more kind of like a little more stagnant, but they are the best offense of all time. So I'm not using that as an insult. There's a little less kind of directional changes. So I feel like Gafford and Lively should be able to find their comfort zone, as the series goes on. But they're going to be forced to make a lot of decisions in space very quickly, at the risk of not giving up a dunk, at the risk of giving up an open 3-pointer to like a 40% shooter. So they're going to have to be on it for sure.
All right. I don't want to keep Bobby too much longer, but I do need to insert a little bit of a break here. So if you guys are watching live on the stream, very much appreciate you hanging out. These pop-up shows, it's frankly easier for me to record live than to record locally and then upload it to YouTube. I am multitasking, as I was telling Bobby. Guys, I have jury duty tomorrow. What in the world is that?
Ooh.
For Dallas County. And then so while you're here, go ahead and consider subscribing, consider liking, leave comments. I love reading some of the comments after the fact. We've been getting some really nice super comments, tips, things like that. We really appreciate it. If you're listening on the audio stream, do me a favor, consider leaving a review. We're really grateful for all of you. I'm gonna insert an audio ad here, and then Bobby and I will be right back. Okay, so you started to get to the next part. Now, I don't expect 4 days out for you to have, been doing all of your Boston homework, but with how good Boston is on paper, what do you make of this series, and what do you make of the Mavericks' chances from like a 50,000-foot view?
That's a really tough question. I think that the pace that this series is played at benefits the Mavs more than it benefits the Celtics. Which might seem like copium or something, but that's just legitimately it's the truth. Boston is not playing super fast. And even like OKC, for example, that series was played at a pretty slow pace, but OKC moved quickly through their possession. Like there was a lot of stuff going on. Boston's offense, they will get you in rotation. They'll get you in the blender, and they got a lot of ball handlers and passers. Like they can make you dizzy, but they play a lot of isolation. They do a lot of switch hunting. And if the Mavs just trust Luka and Kyrie and whoever else, Jaden Hardy or Tim or whoever's in there to hold their own and don't try and overcompensate by doubling or anything, then they can not slow the offense down in the sense of like hold them to 85 points and on 30% shooting, but slow them down in the sense of pace, which I think allows them to keep their bigs on the floor. I think in order for the Mavs to win this series, they have to be able to play big. They have to be able to have Gafford and Lively. They have to play Maxey more minutes at power forward than at center. I think. I could be wrong on that, but that's their biggest advantage, right? Is just size, presence around the rim at both ends of the floor. And the worry going into the Thunder series for me was that series would be played so fast that Gafford and maybe Lively would not be able to play, which was a big problem because Maxey was out.
Yep.
So I was like, man, what are they? We're going to see PJ at the 5 for like 30 minutes a game. But the Mavs were able to contain the pace, control the pace, turn it into a half-court game, and that allowed them to keep those bigs in the game. If they can do that, I think the Mavs have a chance. But if you're looking for like statistical holes in Boston, you're going to be looking for a while.
I got one, and I don't understand it, and I want to talk to you about it. I'm glad you said that. So the Celtics are, and I hate this phraseology, the Celtics are allowing 25, like corner threes are being shot at a 25% from the floor. Or
they only allow 6 per game.
Yeah. So and guys, like, just so we're in context here, like the Mavericks Luka generates the best corner 3-point looks in the league. The Celtics and the Wolves before them absolutely shut down corner 3-point shooting. Like they do not allow the shots to be taken. Now, on top of this, the Celtic shooters are only hitting 25% of their corner threes. Does that mean that the lobs are still going to be open because you can't shut off both valves. You can't. Like the floor is like asking bigs to generate to cover both, like closing out on corner threes and stop the pick and roll rim attack is not. It's a pick your poison. Like I remember Chris Finch losing his mind at Towns for going to the corner off of a Luka look away as he just throws a lob probably to Lively, and it's like. That's the one thing where I'm like, what happens here? Like, am I crazy there?
I mean, I don't think you're crazy, but it's a byproduct of Boston switching so much, and so they're not really tilting the floor. They're not kind of
Okay.
they're not putting too high on the ball. But that's the thing, right? Like Luka and Kyrie are so good one-on-one, and especially, we saw whenever Halliburton was healthy, and even after he left the series or after he wasn't able to play, Indiana was really going at Horford, and they were having a lot of success. And so eventually, like you kind of have to send a little more pressure, like just psychologically, you can't just let that happen over and over again. So if Luka and Kyrie can go at Horford or KP in particular, or maybe Luka is able to find something against Derek White, or maybe Kyrie is able to find something against Tatum, like if you can find enough mismatches and just spam them over and over and over again, then all of a sudden you could force Boston to reconsider what they're doing. Instead of switching, maybe they play drop, in which case you might have a weak side tag, come in and tag a roll man, or maybe you start blitzing, maybe you start at least like hard hedging or doing something to get the ball out of Luka's hands. And then all of a sudden you're forcing defenders to make choices, right? And you get guys open in the corner. Because like a lot of corner threes in the NBA come out of, responding to what's going on in the pick and roll on the left side of the floor. You're leaving the right corner open. The Celtics don't have to do that because they just switch everything. But if you can find the mismatch, which will be, I don't really know what to expect coming out of the gates. They might put their big on Jones. We're
going to see a lot of different stuff. Yeah, it's going to be you can't help, like Jason Kidd traditionally uses game one as a feel out thing. Like he wouldn't admit this, but the fact of the matter is the Mavericks have been blown out of all but they played 6 game ones now. Have 6 series. Is that how many we've done?
Yes.
7.
Yeah.
They got blown out in most of them in game one. Like this is sort of a byproduct.
Yeah.
And so you're
feeling it out, right? But like the way the Mavs play, not only just within a confined game, but also over the course of a series, is everything starts with Luka and Kyrie. And so they need, against a switching team like Boston, they need Luka and Kyrie to assert their dominance very early on, in order to then force the Celtics to respond. And whether that's responding in the second quarter or the second game, or maybe they never have to. Like the Celtics are the better team. They're the better defense with a more established system. The Mavs are going to have to do something to force the Celtics to change the way they want to play.
So coming out of All-Star break, the Mavericks lost like 5 of 6. Like it was awful. I may be getting the numbers wrong, but it was like I remember Josh and I were kind of losing our minds because we're like, all right, have teams figured out that how you should guard Luka is to essentially dare him to score 60 points a game by sitting on corner threes and by just asking him to become the greatest one-on-one player of all time, which will then become like a compounding narrative and become all this, Teams haven't done that in the playoffs. They keep sending doubles at him. They cannot. It's like a coaching brain breaks at some point when you're like, well, we just can't let this one guy kill us. But when you send a double at Luka, the Mavericks have won. Like that's I don't care. Like the Celtics might have the greatest switching defense of all time. If you send 2 guys at Luka, Kyrie and the other 4 or other 3 guys are probably going to score. So I sort of wonder if they really sit on Luka one-on-one and just switch everything and say, okay, you know what? You take your cute little step backs, you go to your floaty mids. We're going to wear you out and make you take all the shots. And then we're going to come down on the other end of the floor and put you in isolation over and over and over again. I think that part of the plan is a little overplayed because that's been happening the whole season. And I think folks need to wake up to that. But I do think the wearing him out offensively and saying, hey, take 35 shots, it's a strategy that I hope we don't see because I don't want to see Luka take 35 shots. But it just, you said something there about Luka and Kyrie needing to assert their dominance. We've seen games where Luka just doesn't really look at the rim because he wants to get everybody else involved. Do you think So I mean, obviously you're not like in the planning sessions, but what do you think that Luka is going to have to come out and be kind of more of a forward-thinking scorer than a passer against the Celtics?
I think so. I mean, there's also something to be said for, if the Mavs are able to play their bigs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Celtics are switching and Luka can get past his man, like be a threat to score and get past his man, then force the big to commit and then find the lob or whatever. Like there are ways to pass, but he's going to have to be aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Just like against teams that double team Luka from the opening tip, he has to beat them with the pass first and then he can score. I think Luka's going to take what you give him. I thought Indiana, for all the defensive ineptitude that at times they showed this season, they weren't a very good defense, but they defended Luka about as well as any team in the NBA this season. I did a whole video of that for the Mavs YouTube actually, where they forced him to score, stay home on shooters, force him to score. You put like 1.5 guys on the ball whenever he comes off a screen, so there's nothing easy right there, and then there's 7 seconds, 8 seconds left in the shot clock. He's got to make a move and take a tough shot.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's ways to slow that down, but also like sometimes Luka's just gonna be like, yeah, this sucks. I'm gonna beat you anyway. I think that's definitely the best way to defend him.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think you run the risk though. Don't you run the risk? The flip side of that of like, all right, we're gonna dare Luka to push. Luka goes, what does Dalton always say? Super Saiyan, where it's just like the man's going to score 25 points in a quarter because he's pissed off at you specifically for daring him, because it's like this is one thing I don't think that people don't watch the Mavericks. It's like, Luka's a crybaby. Like, Luka is a psychopath. And that element.
There's like a psychological element, because it's not just that Luka is going to be talking to every single player on the floor. He's also going to be talking to Joe Mazzulla. Like if they keep switching KP on him and Luka keeps scoring, he's going to look right at Joe Mazzulla eventually and say, that guy can't guard me. Like, stop doing this. Like, you're making a mistake, man. Send a double team. And like that, there's definitely like, have you ever heard people talk about like how Steph Curry threes sometimes feel like they're worth like 5 points?
Yes.
Like there's just like this psychological thing. Luka and Kyrie, I think, have that effect on opponents. And the Mavs get so many dunks. Like
that's my
video
take,
for our YouTube channel today. There was 30 minutes of alley-oops just from February through the playoffs so far. And like there's so many dunks, there's so many lobs, there's so many fast breaks, there's so many crazy shots that both of those two guys hit that like even if you do a really good job and you hold them to 70 points through 3 quarters, it feels like they have like 100, and if you're a team that's already kind of on edge, or if you're like maybe a little emotionally fragile or like frustrated or whatever, then that can lead you to making mistakes. So it feels like the Mavs play like a game of psychology too. But if Boston can stay real clear-headed about it, then I think you just switch everything and say, hey, if Luka and Kyrie want to score 90 a game, that's cool. The Mavs will end up with 96, Yep. But the second you show weakness, then those two murdering psychopaths are going to take advantage of it.
I mean, I've already kept you longer than I meant to. Is there anything else that we haven't really touched that you think is vital? We could talk about this series a ton, but I don't want to beat the doors down too much before the series starts. It's only Monday.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I mean, I think Boston's going to take 40 or 50 threes a game, and threes can be really demoralizing too. But games are long. Games are very long, and I think Mavs fans know more than almost any other fan base what it's like to watch a team that shoots 53s. You can start hot and end cold. You can start cold and end hot. So the game is never over. It's just never over. It doesn't matter what the score is.
We're going to see some huge lead shifts in this. I said that last night, and I think the Mavericks are the only team in the last 3 seasons to overcome 2 17-point or more deficits in a game in the postseason. So, it's this team has rallied back before. And so we're just, don't turn the TV off is what I'll say.
And Boston could rally back as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they can score 21 points in like 2.5 minutes. You're like, what the hell happened? Like it's just, that's how they play. So this is going to be a wild ride. I think it's going to be really fun, but it's going to be very testing on your heart. So just, just try and stay poised, chop wood and carry water.
That's right, man. All right, guys. Bobby Karalla, Mavs.com. They do a ton of work over on the YouTube page. Lots and lots of videos if you're ever looking for more content. I would say go to their post-game show, but you should come to mine instead. Or you can catch up on both of ours at later dates. Him and Isaac and a number of people over there do fun work. I really like their studio. Makes my studio look drab.
It's great, man.
Yeah, this is fun. All right, I can't believe we're here. It's a lot of fun. All right, this has been Kirk and Bobby, and I'll be back with Josh Bowe tomorrow night, where Josh will give his series prediction. I can't wait for him to say something crazy like Mavs in 5, because Josh, I mean, he walked into the Wolves series and he goes, the Mavs are going to win this in 5 games, and he was like that they cannot stop. Like he was very candid about this. He said the Mavericks have, like, when they play middling offenses, it is a war of attrition that the Mavericks win. It's like, okay. And that is what happened.
It's a bold take.
Ah, I know. Crazy. All right, guys. Kirk Henderson and Bobby Karalla, thanks so much for hanging out with us. I'll be back tomorrow night with Josh. Everyone have a great day and start your week.